Hi everyone and welcome to a new episode of the Allplane podcast where we talk with the movers and shakers that are redefining the future of commercial aviation. As usual, before we get into today's episode, I would like to remind you that all previous episodes of this podcast as well as many other aviation stories are available on the Allplane website. That's Allplane.tv, Allplane.tv. And I also would like to use this opportunity to invite you to subscribe to the Allplane newsletter, which is mostly about innovation and sustainability in the commercial aviation industry. You will find a link to subscribe on the Allplane website. So you can go there, enter your email, and you will get the newsletter more or less every week. And now to today's episode. Today is one of those episodes in which we have two guests. One of them is Yvonne Moynihan, who heads ESG and sustainability at Wizz Air. I guess most of you are already familiar with Wizz Air, which is one of the world's largest low-cost airlines, and also, of course, one of Europe's largest and so far most successful carriers. Wizz Air recently presented at a media event, which I had the chance to attend in person in Budapest, its net zero strategy. So basically what Wizz Air did is to outline what its roadmap is going to be to decarbonize its activities all the way to 2050. And one of the companies that is expected to play a role in this plan is actually represented by our other guest today, James Hygate, the founder and CEO of Firefly, a UK-based company that has developed a pathway to turn sewage into sustainable aviation fuel. And Wizz Air is an investor in this project. So both companies are now collaborating, well, first to start production in the UK at a plant in Harwich, and then to scale it up, because Wizz Air is going to need lots of sustainable aviation fuel, and there isn't that much of that fuel at the moment in the market. So this is actually one of the things I'm going to ask Yvonne, is how Wizz Air is going to get enough sustainable aviation fuel to comply with all the EU mandates that are coming into force in the coming years. We will also talk with James about this technology and how Firefly is planning to make this SAF and to distribute it and to scale up production, and how much money do they need to make this happen. But I think it's best if I just stop talking for now and I welcome our guests to the podcast. Hello, Yvonne, James. How are you? Great to see you.
Yes, thank you, Mikhail, for having us on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to meet you, Mikhail.
It's great that we found time to get together and have this conversation. I had the chance to visit Wizz Air in Budapest a few days ago and to learn about the very ambitious plans that Wizz Air has in the field of sustainability. And I think Firefly also plays an important role in those plans. Just quick introduction. I mean, Yvonne, you are in charge of the, let's say, the ESG agenda at Wizz Air, everything that has to do with sustainability. We're going to talk now about the net zero plan that Wizz Air has for the next few years. And James, you are the founder and the CEO of Firefly, which is a SAF company that has a very innovative approach to making SAF. We're going to talk about. And the reason you are both here together is also because Wizz Air and Firefly are cooperating. Wizz Air is an investor in Firefly, and Firefly is expected to play a role in this very ambitious plan that Wizz Air has to decarbonize. So I think today we are going to have the chance to talk in detail about all these plans and how you plan to do your bit to have cleaner skies in the next few years. So I think best maybe is, let's start maybe by Wizz Air, such a well-known brand in the European airline scene. Yvonne, what can you tell us about your role at Wizz Air and how you plan to roll out this net zero plan that you outlined recently in Budapest?
Sure. So as you mentioned at the start, I'm leading the sustainability or ESG agenda at Wizz Air. And the first thing you need to know about Wizz Air is that we have the lowest carbon emission per passenger of any airline globally. And I do repeat myself when I say that, but I think it's important because what it highlights is that we have really invested in sustainability and embedded it within our organization. So we're only a leader because we have taken that action, which allows us to lead the agenda and to be almost a spokesperson on behalf of the industry. So we recently launched our net zero plan, which we've called Flying Towards Net Zero. And it can be defined as the 3 Fs, so flights, fuel, and footprint. And it's an unusual time to launch a net zero plan, I think, because the current zeitgeist is that, net zero is becoming more challenging, and that there are a lot of external factors, particularly in the aviation industry, that are impacting, the road to decarbonization. And in terms of our net zero plan, we've been very aware of that. So we are referring to it as a realistic plan. So our plan doesn't consider, let's say, technology that hasn't been developed yet. It's focusing on, well, first I said flights. So that's renewing our fleet, that's upgrading technology in existing aircraft infrastructure. That will be the first part of our net zero plan. The second and the key decarbonization lever is fuel, so sustainable aviation fuel. So we have dedicated, 35% emissions reductions in our plan to SAF, and we see that as the holy grail. And that's why we have invested in Firefly. And then the third leg of our plan is footprint. So that's really long-term actions in relation to implementing infrastructure reform, such as air traffic control and air traffic management. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. I mean, of course, now, as you mentioned, it seems that there's a bit of like the whole, let's say, aviation sustainability space is going through a bit of a phase where the enthusiasm that was prevalent in the last few years has been kind of gone down a bit. People, I think, are starting to face the difficulties of the challenges of this task of decarbonizing aviation. But of course, you've been working on this for quite a long time. I mean, this is not something that was put together in a couple of days. So you have a long-term horizon that I think you expect to be using 10% of SAF by 2030. Is that right?
Sure. Depending on availability and cost.
Yes, I was about to mention this. We just can talk a bit about the numbers involved, because obviously Wizz Air is such a large airline. I think you have right now some 300 or nearly 300 aircraft on order that haven't been delivered yet. So it's growing a lot. You are very efficient in terms of carbon intensity. Now, there is something that people say, it's like, yeah, but you offer such low fares that you are incentivizing people to fly more often. So what would you tell people that come up with this line and use it to criticize the industry? Well, Wizz Air in particular in this case, but I mean, it's something that is being used in general to criticize the low-cost aviation industry.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is that it's important to understand and highlight at the outset that aviation is an engine of economies. And without aviation, we wouldn't have connectivity, we wouldn't have GDP growth, and there would be a lack of tourism and general economic development. So aviation is critical. It's an essential infrastructure, and we've seen that during the times of the pandemic. We needed to transport food, medicine, and to transport people as well. So it's essential. And what we see from looking at the industry is, and looking at national government plans, EU aviation strategies as well, is that the industry is poised for continued expansion. So it's important not to demonize the activity, because it is an essential activity. And what we need to, shift the narrative on is, well, how can the industry decarbonize? And with low-cost carriers, actually, low-cost carriers are more sustainable by design, and they're more efficient. So if you take Wizz Air, for example, we have point-to-point network. So we're flying directly and not taking 2 trips to get to one place. We have a homogeneous fleet, and in that homogeneous fleet, we have only economy seating, so no business class seating, which can be, have 3 times the emissions of a regular passenger. We have more seats on board our aircraft. So we have 239 seats on our Airbus A321neo aircraft, and we spread that across the aircraft. And of course, the aircraft ourselves, we've invested in the newest technology aircraft with the A321neo, and we have an average fleet age of about 4.5 years. That changes actually by the week because we're continually adding to the fleet. And as a result of that, we have lower intensity and lower emissions per passenger. So by seat emissions, it's the most efficient way to fly. So in terms of the industry, we would say that actually passengers and consumers should be more aware that it's more efficient to fly with a low-cost airline, and you're flying with a lower footprint than you are with legacy. So our view is that actually consumers are going to wake up to this, and they will make the choice as well, not to fly the legacy, more polluting models, but actually switch to the low-cost model.
Mm-hmm. You have a carbon intensity now is 52 grams per passenger per kilometer flown, I think. I guess this number is expected to go down still a bit more with the new larger aircraft that and a newer aircraft that you are getting, the A321neos you have an order.
Yes, so we have a target of 42 grams for 2030 by 2030. So we're continually decreasing. Currently, we have a flat result because we have a number of our aircraft grounded due to engine manufacturing issues at the moment, so that impacts our glide path. However, once we come out of that situation, we will continue to decrease again. And by 2030, we will be 42 grams. But if you look by comparison, our next best competitor is at around 66 grams. And then if you're looking at the legacy carriers, the comparison would be, 80 to 100 grams. So we're far more efficient than a traditional operator.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll try to post some tables there in the show notes to provide a bit like a reference for people that are checking this data. So there are obviously things that you have some control over, like the fleet management, and others that you don't have that much control over. Of course, you can try to influence that, like ATC, like air traffic control optimization, also the aircraft technology improvements that depend on the OEMs. Obviously, you can try to influence that as a major customer or as a major player in the industry. But there's an area where you do have some capacity to act, which is sustainable aviation fuel. And here's where I think it's a good moment to introduce maybe Firefly. James, you're the founder of Firefly. There are quite a few companies right now in the SAF space. And what I think is very interesting of this moment is that there are all these different pathways and different approaches to this technology. What can you tell us about Firefly? I think you've been in this industry for about 20 years or even more in different biofuel projects. What made you go for this approach, and what are you up to?
Sure. I've worked in waste to biofuel since 2003 and mainly around road use, and we've established biofuels projects all over the world. When we started to look at where the future of liquid fuels would go, it was clear that they would go towards aviation. And when we started to look at how you were going to meet the targets and mandates that were there, to be honest, we were kind of struggling to find suitable routes with suitable feedstocks to actually produce the volumes of fuel, because if you haven't got something to make the fuel out of, you're not going to get any. So we started. Everyone always asks, where was your eureka moment? Where did you think about turning sewage into jet fuel? And it probably isn't as you expect. It was actually we had quite a critical analysis of various feedstock materials that were out there, and sewage biosolids was okay. Oh, this is biomass. There's a lot of this stuff. Oh, there's a whole industry that gets it to an incredibly consistent form that's also consolidates it. This looks like the ideal material to turn into a liquid fuel. The challenge with it is it doesn't really fit into existing ASTM pathways because the material, as you can imagine, is quite wet. One of the other interesting things with biosolids is that it's cheap, and that's if you're making fuel, you're competing with fossil fuels, which are basically cheap, and for any fuel producer, your feedstock is where feedstock and feedstock preparation is where your money goes. Biosolids, whole industry that gets it to a very consistent form, and we also then found out it's getting phased out of its current disposal routes. So although we're a SAF business and that's how we present ourselves, we're also addressing the problem with this waste material. It's currently spread on farmers' fields, and that's going to get phased out because of microplastics and PFAS, so forever chemical contamination. So great feedstock, but didn't fit within existing processing routes, and that's why we've gone down this route of developing our own pathway to make jet fuel.
Is this a proprietary technology, or there could be other players using that?
Yeah, so we are, I suppose technically, although we have IP across the whole process, we are using existing technologies that are out there. And with any biofuels projects or anything at scale like this, it's putting pieces of the puzzle together. So I'll talk about the downstream side first of all. So
tell us how it works.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I'm not going to go right to the very, very start of the process. I'll go to when it comes out. So basically, there's the wastewater industry has primary, secondary, and tertiary treatment, and it basically ends in anaerobic digestion. There is a material that comes out the end of anaerobic digestion called a biosolid, and currently that gets spread on farmers' field. And this is a kind of a non-offensive, it looks a bit like compost material that goes out to farmers' fields. The challenge with it is it's about 80% water. And so if you look at a traditional thermal route to process that material, it doesn't really work. You use loads of energy to dewater it. So we utilize a process called hydrothermal liquefaction. And essentially, imagine big pressure cooker. We put this material into high pressure, moderate temperatures, and the water in there actually reacts with the biomass and breaks it down into two products, a biocrude and a biochar. The biocrude can then easily be separated out for the next part of the process. The biochar is actually it can, once certified, would be able to be used on land as a fertilizer, but can be used as a low carbon aggregate, things like that. Once you've got this biocrude, it's kind of similar to a fossil crude. It's like a fresh fossil crude, so it's got nitrogen, oxygen, a few other things in there, but it's basically, we're doing a process that happens in the Earth's crust over millions of years. We're just speeding it up. So we have something that is essentially a crude oil. The technology we use, hydrothermal liquefaction, isn't new. It's been around since the 1950s. In fact, it's used in plastics recycling and in some biomass. It's new with this specific feedstock.
Mm-hmm. And this crude, does it need to be refined then? Go through a refinery?
Exactly, yeah. So when you look at the downstream side of it, downstream process, so upstream side near the wastewater treatment works, crude oil now going down to a bespoke refinery. And when I talk about piece of the puzzle to make this work, so when we look at the refinery, we've partnered with Chevron and Lummus Global for the catalyst systems and the design for this specific crude. Well, if you look at it would be every other one of Wizz Air's aircraft, or every other one of anybody's aircraft will be running on a fuel produced in using CLG technology. They are the biggest in the world by a million miles. So for us, having an exclusive partnership for this crude with them is a big deal, because that's enabling us to clearly demonstrate that it's at a very high technology readiness level, but also gives us the ability to replicate this not only in the UK but wherever we can that's got a suitable system in the world. And so for the project we're developing in the UK, we're actually locating it at a small refinery in Harwich in southeast England. We're putting in this bespoke hydro treater there, but then we're actually using the other infrastructure on the site to fractionate and distill the fuel. We've got the tank storage there, we've got blending, we've got everything there on site, and a load of people that know how to run a refinery. So for us, it's a fast track way to get into this fuel production. And as you can imagine, because we're using sewage biosolids, we've got access to the material to make it.
But you need how the logistics work for this process. So do you need to have some sort of facility next to a water treatment plant to collect the feedstock, or you do it locally next to the refinery you have in Harwich? And then once you have the refined product, I guess you also need to have a logistics network to take it to the airports or the distribution points. So how you plan to organize all this?
Sure. So the upstream side goes close to sludge treatment works. And when you look at the wastewater industry, you have loads and loads of small little plants that go into the next stage. There's less of those. And then there's a few sludge treatment works. And currently these sludge treatment works load up trucks that then drive off to farmers' fields and spread it around. So I think there's about 70,000 trucks on the road each year moving this material around. What we're doing is locating the hydrothermal liquefaction facilities ideally on or very close to wastewater treatment works. So the energy, we're only moving the energy dense crude to the refinery. So it's no, when you look at an oil and gas model, you can overlay it. It's like we don't have the sort of the nodding donkey pulling the oil out of the ground. We have the poo squisher making the crude up at the wastewater treatment works. Then yes, that then goes to the refinery. But like I said, we've located this in an existing refinery. So that logistics network's there. That's what they already do. So when I talk about putting pieces of the puzzle to make this work, one of the key pieces is we have a very significant offtake agreement with Wizz Air, and this is a big deal and kind of I think relatively unique in the industry. It's something that's fair and even-handed for both parties. But I think the important thing is it's for 15 years. It's a proper signed contract, and it's got mechanisms in there where Wizz Air get I suppose a good price on the fuel, and we can't lose any money on the production. So it is a bankable contract. And so having all these pieces of the puzzle will unlock this and make this first this first project happen.
So Wizz Air invested, I think, £5 million into this project, and then it's got an uptake agreement for 15 years. How much fuel? And maybe that's a question also for Yvonne. What percentage of Wizz Air's needs of SAF this represents? Because I imagine, I don't know how big this plant is, but I guess Wizz Air needs lots of SAF. If you need to have like 10% by 2030, you will need a huge amount of SAF for these more than 300 aircraft that are coming into service in the next few years.
So to give you an idea of the scale of the offtake, so it's 525,000 tons over 15 years. That's for all the outputs of the first facility. But what we wanted to do was get an offtake that we could take to a bank and borrow money against to build the facility. And took a while to put it in place. But this is a big deal. I think quite unusual industry. The facility we've got is using biosolids basically from 3 utility companies in the UK. There are many, many more. And as you can imagine, this is a material that we've got 8.1 billion producers. There's a lot of this material out there, and so we aren't just developing one project. We're going to be developing many projects in many locations because there's a waste management challenge. What we're seeing in the UK with again phase out of land use is happening all over the world, and the counterfactual to that is incineration. Basically, because this is 80% water, it doesn't burn particularly well. So, you have a big energy input for that at the disposal route. So we're offering at one end of the process a waste management solution. We have a lot of the utility companies globally now saying, look, we want to see this happen. We need to see this happen because we don't have a route for this material. And then you've got the demands in aviation. So I said it's a big, this first offtake is a big one, but there is going to be an awful lot more fuel over the coming years.
How scalable this is and how much capital investment it requires. So for a plant like the one you are setting up now in England, if you were to replicate that in other locations, do you have an estimation of how much capital will you need to basically to fulfill your growth plans over the next few years?
Yeah, we do. And it's quite a lot, but it is probably less than many other routes to SAF. So the project in the UK, that's going to be processing 100,000 tons of bio-crude a year. And so we've got access to that feedstock, as I said, and we could do, in the UK, you could probably do 3 times that size with the feedstocks there. That's going to make about 45,000 tons of SAF and about 30,000 tons of naphtha. The capital investment for that project is about €500 million.
For one plant or for the whole growth?
For the whole thing. So the upstream and the downstream side. Yeah, nice, easy round number. But anyway, that's what it is. And so we would, but once how we're developing it, it's each part of the process is effectively modular in a way. So a lot of the engineering work we're doing now, the idea is you can replicate that quickly in the locations. And it's interesting when you look at the wastewater industry, they it's changed and the disposal routes have changed over many years, but it tends to be a wholesale change across the whole industry. And so getting that locked in really does give you access to feedstock in many places. And that's where a lot of our work's been over the last couple of years. Obviously, we've got the qualification of the fuel and we've got the engineering and we've got, I'm in London today getting the money to pay for it. But actually it's locking in your feedstock supply. And we're doing that.
Because I guess on the demand side, there's a scarcity, right? So all the airlines kind of scrambling to secure the amount of fuel they need to fulfill the European mandates and potentially other mandates. Obviously, Wizz Air operates mostly in Europe, but other jurisdictions are also implementing their own mandates. So is there going to be enough SAF for everyone?
So I would say we could be a meaningful proportion of it, but you need many SAF producers to succeed.
I mean, we have these mandates have very specific dates and requirements, but these projects take quite a few years. So, for example, what's your time horizon for this project? And if it works, if you have to scale it up, are we talking about how many years? 3, 5, 10 years to get to full capacity?
To get to full capacity, we're hoping to be at a point where we're at full capacity in 2029, but we're hoping that we're actually producing volumes of fuel slightly earlier than that. Okay. Then replicating it, we're hoping that can move quickly. We are looking at other projects in parallel, but obviously when you're looking at doing this, you need to find the markets which work best for you, because it is something you could literally do anywhere where there's I suppose a modern wastewater treatment system. You could put this in, and you're right, the demand is there for this fuel.
So
it's great to be solving two problems. That's the nice thing about it.
Yeah. Same with the process, the pathway that uses waste oils as well. I mean, it's a way to get rid of all these materials that make no good, no? Right? So
yeah, that's right. And that's what we did in green fuels for 20 odd years.
Yeah.
But there is only a limited amount. And if you want to look at a comparison, if you want to compare, so you can do a comparison of the human production of used cooking oil per year. It's about 2.5 to 3 liters of cooking. If you go into a waste, and you can model it. And we used to do that actually when we were putting projects in cities. And in fact, the building I'm in, more PwC is obviously in more London at the moment. This was a building that was running on waste derived biodiesel collected in London. It had the highest BREEAM rating of any building, I think, in Europe at the time. And so, but you could easily model how much of that feedstock you can get. Well, it so happens you can actually model how much of our feedstock that you can get, because some people might eat more or less, but you produce this similar quantity of product each year. And so we know on a per person basis, it's compared to 2.5, 3 liters of cooking oil. You're probably looking at something like 10 to 12 liters of biocrude per year. So it is actually a significantly larger potential market if you're looking just at waste. Obviously, if you're using virgin oils, and you can produce really large volumes of fuels. But if you're looking at waste, no, this is a route to make more than current.
If the demand is assured because of the mandates, why are we not seeing a lot more investment going into scaling this up fast? Because in principle, unless there's a massive regulatory change, there's a huge gap between supply and demand. So in theory, more demand than supply here. So it should be, in principle, a good investment case for people interested in investing in this sector.
Oh yeah, it's an amazing investment case, but it's still quite difficult when you start getting into project and infrastructure finance, and you're talking to banks and you're getting debt to effectively, build these projects. That is a very risk-averse area, and so it is important. Like I said, the offtake with Wizz, that's a massive deal for us to have that. We've got something that's going to give us the ability to unlock that finance, and getting these first of a kind plants over the line. That's when you'll start to see this snowball, and it's kind of the same with with everybody in the space. They've got to see these things happen. You also need policy in place. With all the will in the world, fossil fuels are very, very inexpensive. These fuels, because of the additional processing, and certainly in the early days, will be more costly. And so you have to have policy in there to actually mandate the purchase of it. And that's one of the reasons, in the UK, and we do look globally, and we've got obviously interest in this across the world, but the UK is probably, as we see it, the best place in the world to be a SAF producer currently, and specifically from our feedstock part. We've got loads of this stuff here, so we can make an awful lot of fuel.
All right, so Yvonne, then from the airline perspective, have you found supply to be a major problem? I mean, you obviously have invested in Firefly, but I don't know what percentage of your needs a Firefly operating at full capacity will represent. I guess only a portion of the amount of fuel that you need. What has been your experience in trying to secure SAF to fulfill the mandates that Wizz Air will have to comply with in the next few years?
It's very complex and it's very challenging. So there are both, I think, supply and demand challenges at this stage. And the reason that we decided to invest in Firefly is really to navigate or put ourselves in front of these challenges. So traditionally, our business model is to fly passengers from A to B. So to invest in the production of SAF for us was so unusual. But it's really a signal that we see that SAF is going to be the answer to a lot of our challenges in the future. So we took this portfolio approach to do venture capitalism to make sure that we have the right strategy and the right SAF supply going forward. So James alluded to there the offtake agreement being highly important for SAF producers. So in this partnership that we have with Firefly, so there's two aspects to it. First is that, we have invested equity into the company, and the other is that we have the offtake agreement. And what the offtake agreement does is it signals to the market that this is an investable industry, and really it's a trigger for continued investment. But we need to see more of these. There was a lot of activity in terms of agreeing offtakes agreements last year. This year, I don't think there has been as much excitement on the topic, but it's really important that airlines are starting to do this now for the long term. And with Firefly, what's important for us is the feedstock that Firefly has. So it's, as James said, it's cheap and it's abundant. And for us, we are also cheap. We're low cost. So I like to say that our business models are a marriage of low costs. So it's a perfect synergy that we have. And together, I think that this will be, a great partnership for the future.
How much cheaper than other types of fuel of SAF is Firefly's fuel going to be? Is there a very significant difference in price? I guess, you're getting a good price, as you mentioned earlier, as investors and partners, but right now people are mentioning price differentials of 3 to 5 times more expensive than conventional fuel. What's the differential going to be with Firefly SAF?
So, the pricing, of course, is confidential. And maybe I'll let James answer that, but it's really the feedstock here, which is the critical aspect, and of course our investment as well in Firefly makes a difference. So maybe James, if you want to talk more about.
Yeah, so when we looked at this as a business, and we looked, and again, it's one of the reasons why we went down this route, is we recognised you'd have to eventually reach a point, and to be able to have the environmental impact that we want, have something that you could do, in markets that don't necessarily have all of the incentives. So obviously, the first of a kind plants, these first projects, the fuel is going to be more costly to produce than a fossil fuel, but yeah, we do see a world in the future where that differential changes, but it will be be an open market. As I said, we have an offtake for a proportion of the output. So we probably, again, to finance the project, is making sure your offtake is just enough that you can get the money, but you also want a bit on the top there where you can. You can sell that at the market price, which is what we're looking to do. I would say when you look at routes to SAF, we're probably more comparable to sort of heifer type routes, as cost, which again is maybe different to many of the second generation SAFs. And it does, but it depends which market you're in, and the infrastructure that's there. But in the UK, I think we could be a very competitive supplier and have a real business that makes money, which is the main thing.
Because everyone now says, well, SAF is more expensive, but I guess, there's a learning curve. There's also economies of scale at play if you look at the longer term. So what are the perspectives? You've been in this business for over 20 years. From your expertise and knowledge of this industry, how realistic it is to expect costs going down based on the increased volumes over time? So can we realistically expect SAF to equalize with conventional fuel over time as production increases, or that's something that remains to be seen? We cannot take it for granted.
I suppose when you look at the true costs of conventional fuels, and now that there is, effectively you're having to cover the costs of the polluting factor of that. Yeah, I think we will see that levelization over time, and it is important. We are one route to SAF, and we're certainly not going out and saying this is the only way to do it. We need lots of success stories in this industry. We need lots of these routes to reach commercialization. It's kind of odd that we're in the SAF industry. We're not really competitors. We may compete for investment dollars in these early stages, but when you're in production, you're not, because the demand for this product is, does far outstrip the supply, and it will do for a long period of time. But yeah, you should see that levelization over time, and when you take in the cost of the emissions, actually that's a fairer comparison, I think, between fossil SAF and fossil jet. As I said, what we do have in the UK with the SAF mandate is really good. This is now in law and it's happening. We have the SAF certificates, which is a great mechanism to support production. We had something similar in the UK, and we have something similar in the UK for road fuels, which has worked well for many years. And so, yeah, for us, this is the right place to be doing the first project. But each market has its own, pros and cons, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that all the different SAF producers are not really competitors. I guess there's going to be space for everyone here. And that's where I would like to switch back to Yvonne, because at Wizz Air, you have invested in Firefly, but this is not the only investment in the SAF space. You also have been investing in another producer, I think it's called Clean Joule in the US. So I have a couple of questions. One is, how much fuel are you expecting to get from the producers you are directly investing in? How much you expect to source from the market? And what percentage of your needs or your future needs for these 2030 goal have you already covered, or are you still looking for additional sources to get to those goals?
It's not easy to answer that question, to be honest, because it's too early in the game to even plan. So if we look at our investment in both Firefly and Clean Joule, those are medium-term investments. However, up until 2030, so from now for the next number of years, in the short term, it's a very volatile situation, and we're planning on a year-by-year basis. So if we look at our SAF needs right now, we have a mandate. We're required to have 2% SAF this year, and really, I would describe it as a scramble, because we are uplifting SAF from over 100 different airports across the EU. And you can imagine the challenges and the complexity involved in that in terms of both procurement, contract negotiation, price. Of course, then it's also an increase in price as well, because fuel is already one of our highest costs of the business. Now we have an increased cost. And then on top of that, of course, we want to make sure that we have the best quality of SAF, because we are entitled to get SAF allowances pending certification, so to help try and reduce that delta between the cost of a traditional Jet A1 and sustainable aviation fuel. So right now, as I said, we're doing it on, we have a tender each year, and we're sourcing SAF in the short term through that dynamic. And then we hope that once the market becomes a little bit more harmonized, that then we can see more offtakes coming into play, because really at the end of the day, what you want to see is more offtake agreements, because it provides more certainty. But the reason that we have this piecemeal approach in the short term is because the volume is not there. The volume is there, and the cost, we mentioned it several times, 4 to 5 times more expensive. And when you have limited supply, that cost is not going to go down. We need that economies of scale. And what's crucial here is that we need this ramp up in production. And the only way to get that ramp up in production, I mean, first is from the industry side, which is happening through investment, capital investment. But on the other side, there's a lot of ambition for net zero coming from different national strategies, but we need to see more action. We need to see more funds invested from a government side into the industry as well, because as I said at the very start, aviation is a vector of economic development. We know that the best means of decarbonisation for aviation is through sustainable aviation fuel. So we need to see a proliferation of SAF being produced at local level across Europe.
So more, you would say more government financial support is needed to scale this up quick.
Absolutely. We need national SAF strategies that are willing to, put investments, put subsidies into the production of local sustainable aviation fuel plants. We definitely, I mean, we can see that in the UK, there's a lot of activity. The government is definitely eager to have a SAF industry. There is a sort of industrial strategy. There's also a revenue certainty mechanism for producers as well. And I think we need to spread that across the EU. And I think that's from the European Commission perspective, certainly there is an ambition to have a clean industrial deal and to have SAF funding. But again, we need more action from the local level.
Yeah, I'm even wondering whether all airlines in Europe will be able to fulfill this 2% mandate, because it's still quite a lot of SAF, even if in percentage it doesn't sound that much, but at the European level, that's a huge amount of stuff.
So this is why we have 2% mandate, and then by 2030 we have 6% in the EU, 10% in the UK. Airlines are not committing above the 2% for now because there's no visibility on the market, and that's why airlines are not committing more than that now, because number one, it's an additional cost, and number two, the volume isn't there.
Yeah. So basically. There are also projects that will take some time. I think the Clean Fuel project is expected to come on stream by 2030, something like that, in the US. So
it's a similar timeline.
Yeah. And what about the synthetic fuels? Do you have any projects or are you looking at any investments in that space, which is also part of the mandate in the longer term?
Honestly, we don't see a path to that at this stage. It's prohibitively expensive. James will be able to talk more on the actual cost that will be involved in terms of production of facilities, the amount of energy that's needed as well. And the fact of the matter is that SAF is not available currently. So I think certainly that's something that's a target that should be looked at and reviewed, and we need a more realistic pathway before investment can be put into that.
What's the feedback you are getting from the European authorities, which are the relevant ones for Wizz Air mostly? I mean, I guess you go often to Brussels to discuss this type of topics. What's the mood in the institutional spheres about this?
Well, the European Commission is, in fairness, doing a lot, and we are part of a body as well, which brings together manufacturers, energy producers, airlines, all stakeholders across this ecosystem, with the idea of being, developing low carbon fuels, bringing partners together, and of course, ESAF as well is one of the key focuses for Europe in the future. But again, it's early days, and we're not seeing that quantum leap in technology yet. And to have that quantum leap, again, we need subsidies, and that will be what really drives this ambition forward.
Just to wrap it up, because we are actually getting close to the time we had allocated for this conversation. I know you have a pretty busy day today. So just before we wrap up, just wanted to ask you about any future plans that you might be able to share at this point. You have this roadmap which covers many years, all the way up to 2050. Besides investing in SAF ventures, what other immediate projects Wizz Air has in store in the sustainability space?
Well, we're looking forward to what more can happen with Firefly in the short term. So we will be working together for, the production. And of course, once we start uplifting SAF in the UK using Firefly's product, that will be a momentous occasion. So we will continue to work hand in glove. And of course, we will be supporting whatever the needs are for Firefly. As we can see, this is an urgent issue. And we need more players like James and his colleagues, because this is the future.
No, thank you, Yvonne. And I think once we've got this first project over the line, it's excremental growth from then on. There's a lot of this material.
I like that one.
Got to get one in.
Very good. Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope that everything goes according to plan, and yeah, we can see these projects coming to fruition in the expected time frame. So just left for me to thank you very much for your time. I'm going to be posting links and resources in the show notes so that people can dig deeper into this and check out more details about those projects. Just before we go, well, obviously Wizz Air, I guess everyone, at least in Europe, everyone knows Wizz Air's website, wizzair.com, if they want to check all the sustainability initiatives there. Firefly, there are quite a few companies called Firefly out there doing in different industries. So which is the right website for Firefly, please? Because I guess if people do firefly.com or firefly.co.uk, I think that's not the right one. They should go to.
That's right. Yeah. So flyfirefly.uk. So flyfirefly.uk. You can learn a bit more on there about it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to see you again, everyone.
If you like this podcast, you can support us by giving it a great rating on Apple, Spotify, or whichever platform you get it from. And remember, you can, of course, subscribe to it. And you can also get regular updates through the Allplane website. That's allplane.tv. We have a newsletter where we cover the aviation industry every week with a special focus on innovation and sustainability. So give it a go. Thank you and goodbye.